Media is looking at Kamala Harris here in D.C. Here's Chris.
I want to say hello to Kamala. If she can hear me, I know she's going to be speaking shortly. And I want to say to the team, embrace her. She's the best.
There you heard President Biden. I'm Chris Cuomo. Thank you for being here. It is time to get after it. The president bowed out of the race because he was forced out by his party. He did not want to do this. But the combination of incoming fire from his own party's electeds, COVID, and the chorus of concern about the polls and suggestions that he would drag down the whole party if he doesn't give it to Harris. That's what created the letter that we all saw yesterday, with the reference that he'll tell us more later this week. What will we learn? Will he resign? His letter says no. My reporting says no. The idea that if he can't run, he can't serve, silly. The idea that the right can trigger the 25th Amendment is stupid. Just read the amendment. So, the Democrat power brokers got what they wanted. Next question, now what? I can tell you this, Biden dropping out, not part of any well-thought-out plan. You know the saying, failing to plan is planning to fail? Democrats are hoping that will not be their epitaph in this election. The only obvious move is the move to VP Harris, who made her first press appearance today. Yet already, the media narrative is shifting. It was, Biden must go because Harris can win. Now it's, Harris has some hill to climb. Why? Because that is how the political game works. And the Democrats played right into it. I know I said this last night in our special, but it's even more true today. Slow down. The media is in turbo mode. Harris is going to get increasing scrutiny. But we don't know how this plays out yet for the Democrats. We don't know what the convention will be like yet. Can they thread the needle of getting the Harris ticket they seem to want before the convention without looking like they once again cheated the voters and just anointed someone? The progressive wing of that party is flexing. They didn't want Biden or Harris. What will that mean? We'll see. And Trump and the right are already worrying about what they wish for. How do we know? The absurd and obnoxious early attacks, the tactics, as I call them, like this clip where they portray the vice president as a woke joke.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
What's the problem? Well, the problem is they're playing you for suckers, as if that's just how she wanted to speak. Harris was addressing a room of people with disabilities. Many were reportedly blind. That's why she was introducing herself that way. Oh, they didn't tell me that part. I wonder why. Add this to Trump saying he wants to get his money back for running against Biden, and the speaker saying the switch to another candidate is illegal and undemocratic. You can smell the fear and also be reminded of why so many in this country don't believe or like Trump or his cronies. That's why it's one of the worst races I've ever covered. Very interesting now, but still two of the lowest popularity choices in an undeniable battle of which is worse. It's a battle to the bottom. Thank you, political parties. My favorite early effort from the right so far is Team Trump complaining that the Democrats are being undemocratic in replacing Biden. They even call it a coup. My brothers and sisters on the right. Too soon, man. Too soon. January 6th is still fresh for a lot of voters, and you're calling this a coup. You really think after the flagrant attempts to undo the last election results with no good basis that you have high ground complaining about the democracy and coups? You think that's going to work with independent voters? Wow, that's chutzpah. Now, VP Harris deserves the attention right now, deserves the scrutiny, and she has her own very real challenges. Most are scripting to who the running mate choices are going to be, not me. VP matters, especially on this ticket. The favorites are Senator Kelly of Arizona, Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania. But again, slow down. Don't get caught up in the media's insatiable appetite for the next narrative. Harris needs a look, okay? She inherits a bad hand. She's down, right? The numbers are trending the wrong way for weeks. Now, of course, she also has a trump card, which is Trump, potentially the least popular candidate in modern history. The ABT vote has Democrats anxious to help Harris. ABT, anybody but Trump. That's why she's racking up Democratic endorsements so quickly, including from folks who may have had a shot to run against her. Who? Governors Whitmer, Moore, Newsom, Shapiro. As a result, some of the money that was holding back with concerns about Biden loosening up to an extent. Today, Harris's team announced that her campaign raised more than $230 million in the 24 hours since Biden's announcement. That's a record for this election so far. So why do I say to an extent? Because you need close to $1 billion. And you're going to meet a major donor right here tonight who isn't feeling the shift or the Democrats' chances. And this guy is likely not alone. So why is that? First, VP Harris is almost as unpopular as Trump. Did you see the 538 poll? July 17. Harris, net approve, negative 11.8. 38.6 of those surveyed approve. 50.4 disapprove. That's high for a VP. Now, you can say, well, that's just an echo of Biden, but it's still a little unusual. Less than 70% of Democrats viewed her favorably before the move. That's in party. Remember, usually you're going to be at 80, 90. The question is why and what can be done about it. How much of this is because of who she is and how much is about how she is? Now, I can't answer what role race and gender play, but I'm not going to dismiss them as factors. And in terms of how she is, there are pluses and minuses to her presentation and pedigree. She can be seen as very charismatic. She can also be seen as condescending. She had to drop out of the 2020 race before the first primary on account of what? Poor traction, even with or especially with black voters. So why her now? Not a surprise. Sitting VP. And yes, for Democrats, all but impossible to pass over a black female in the party of DEI. Things could still change, but this is clearly what the power structure wants. Now, speaking of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, Harris as a VP and more so as a senator was seen as an exaggerated proponent of woke policies, which of course the right but also independents struggle with, which is also likely a reason why outlets considered Harris as potentially the most left of the Democrats in the Senate when she was there. For example, government track, tracks how many bipartisan bills each senator co-sponsors. In 2019, when Harris was in the Senate, she had the lowest at 15%. So then why are progressives, some at least, not okay with Kamala? Because Harris has a mixed record. It's not easy to pin her down on the political spectrum. Tough on crime, but also pro-helping felons with programs. Back and forth on Medicaid for all, back and forth on legalizing marijuana. She explains her pronouns a lot, but hasn't owned DEI the way some would like on the left. And of course, her biggest ownership issue, southern border. President Biden put her in charge of what's going on there, and we never heard anything since. It's been over a year and a half, and we never saw any real action. Now, all of this variety in policy positions could be played one of two ways, poser or pragmatic. This is for Harris, this challenge. Do you position yourself as the prosecutor in California that was tough on crime, especially harsh on minorities, or the senator after George Floyd when some saw her as unsupportive of police? So Harris has some known and competing negatives to handle, and quickly. But it is the unknowns that really fuel the analysis. Can Harris make this race about the policies that hurt Trump and get out of the cult of personality? She will lose that race if she doesn't. His attacks on democracy, his attacks on reproductive rights, his attacks on affordability of living, especially for the working class. And then you have the meta issues. What will Harris mean to voters as the first potential woman president, and a black woman president at that, and one who is the child of immigrants on top? Talk about the American dream. What will the prospect mean for the black vote, for independents? Biden was losing them each week. Most importantly, if it is Harris, how much will the ABT, the anyone but Trump vote, be boosted by a candidate without Biden's health issues? Now, like I said, it's not a done deal, and these are long weeks until the Democratic convention, but I'll certainly be there now. No question, Biden dropping and Harris on the rise has huge implications for the Democratic Party and this election, including implications for our first guest, independent for president Bobby Kennedy Jr. joins us right now. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Chris, thanks for having me.
What do you make of President Biden's decision and Kamala Harris getting all this shine?
I mean, I'm not surprised by President Biden's decision. I predicted 18 months ago when I got into this campaign that he would not be able to finish the campaign. I commend President Biden for 50 years of public service, of service to our country, but I think he tarred that reputation by staying in too long. And I think he damaged the Democratic Party by allowing what we've seen and what we're seeing today, which is the evisceration of democracy. What they did during the primary process, which was to have an anointment rather than democracy. When I was a kid, when you were young, Chris, the Democratic Party was all about fighting for voting rights and making sure that every person, every voter in this country was able to vote for whoever they wanted to vote for. And today's Democratic Party is about, it's almost like a Soviet-style party where you have the DNC elite, which is corporate-driven, that is choosing the candidate and not letting anybody and disallowing any competition.
Yeah, I hear the analogy. Of course, look, and I know you know this, but it's far from ideal what we're seeing. But let's not forget, Putin has a tendency to kill the people that he doesn't want running him against him. So I think we're still ahead of them. But I get your beef, and especially you, and that's one of the reasons I wanted you to come on tonight, which is, if not for Biden insisting on being the candidate early on and there not being a process, you may have been in that field. Does this change your disposition at all with respect to the Democratic Party and their convention and your potential participation?
Well, if the Democratic Party was smart, they would come to me, because the polling consistently has shown that I'm the only person who, if I were running for a Democrat, as a Democrat, I'm the only person who could beat President Trump. In fact, Zogby did a poll this week that showed in a head-to-head race, I beat President Trump by 14 points. Kamala Harris loses to President Trump because I take a lot of President Trump's voters. Mm-hmm. That would be the smartest thing if they actually wanted to win the election. But I think the corporate forces that now control the Democratic Party ever since 2010, when the Citizens United case unleashed the tsunami of corporate money into the political process, both political parties have become essentially wholly owned subsidiaries of BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, the pharmaceutical industry, the military contractors, et cetera. And all of this chaos right now is distracting us from the thing that we really ought to be talking about, Chris, which is the affordability of, the fact that we're losing the American middle class, and mortgages have doubled in price over the past 4 years. 60% of Americans can't put their hands on $500 if they have an emergency in their family. We got $6 bread, we got $6 milk, we got $5 gasoline, and nobody can afford to live in this country anymore. A middle class, and it's all driven by these two presidents who spend $8 trillion apiece printing money, which is a tax on the middle class. If you earned $1,000 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, that $1,000 is worth $560 today, and it's because we spent all this money on wars and all this money on COVID, which these two presidents gave us, those lockdowns.
There's no question that's the discussion we should be having. And there's also no question that's why these two were so unpopular. We've never seen anything like this before, where the two main people were seen as weak as this. Now, you got into a point of intrigue this week, and I'll just ask you straight up to tell the audience, is it true that you offered in a phone call with Trump to get out of the race in exchange for a job in the administration?
No, that is not true.
What is the truth?
Well, President Trump called me actually a few hours after his assassination attempt, And he talked, we talked about unifying the country and the importance. I think he was really, at that point, Chris, he said to me, he asked me actually during that conversation whether I had a religious bent. And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, well, I think I do right now because
right now,
I just had
I'm
an
sure
experience like none other.
I'm sure he did right then. I mean, what a moment to survive.
Yeah, and it was really a miracle that he survived, and thank God that he did. But I think that he really had a kind of revelatory moment where he was thinking of, how do we unify this country? I'm very, very flattered that that he reached out to me. We had a long conversation that night, a couple of long conversations. They were very pleasant. I was very impressed by some of the things he said.
But it wasn't about you dropping out.
I ended up we talked about a wide range of things, and I'm not going to go into the exact detail because that would violate a trust with President Trump. But there was no agreement made. And, I'm in it to win it. Our polling numbers are way up since that time. Our volunteer numbers since President Biden dropped out are way up. Our engagement numbers are way up. And, I'm in it to win it, as I've been from the beginning.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. You have a platform for the duration of this election to make your case to the people. I've been very clear with the audience. I do not believe the parties should be exclusively deciding who gets a voice. We'll see how this plays out. Thank you for taking the opportunity. We'll speak again soon, Bobby. Thank you.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Bobby and I were at a wedding this weekend for our niece, and it was good to see that he had Secret Service protection. He deserves it. He warrants it. And it's the right move. So I was glad to see you well protected, Bobby. Take care. 4 minutes, 5 seconds. Coming up, Stephen A. Smith was one of the first public figures to say Biden's too old and needed to step down. Why? Because he's not about playing favorites. He's about giving you what he believes. So what does he think about this move? What does he think about Harris? What does he think about what Bobby just said? What does he think about what's happening with the Secret Service? There's a lot for our man to unpack. Can he handle it? I don't know. We'll see.
The Democratic Party should be ashamed of itself. I think they are a national embarrassment to be in a situation where it's the year 2024 and a man that turned 81 years of age in November, you're asking him to give you 4 more years because he is your best candidate.
He was right then. He took heat and he stood by it. That's just one reason I love Stephen A. Smith. He tells it the way it is. So I wanted very much to bring him in here, and I hope you're watching the Stephen A. Smith Show. You know him from ESPN, but he's got his own show, the host of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Excellent programming, wide variety of topics. Thank you, my handsome friend.
What's going on, buddy?
So, Biden is out.
Yep.
You are not surprised.
Nope.
Do you like the reaction to Biden being out and what we are seeing crystallize in the Democratic Party around VP Harris?
Well, I would say this. I think the sympathy towards the president has been a bit excessive. And the reason why I say that is because, listen, it's not about ageism. Again, it's about him. And there was a clear decline. And his years of service, 48 years as a senator, vice president, and president of the United States, show your appreciation for him, but recognize the times that we're living in, how urgent this upcoming election is, and saying there's somebody better for the job. That's what they had to do. And then you see all of these crocodile tears coming from all over the place at the Democratic Party. And we know you pushed them out. I mean, everybody can see that. Yeah. So the fact is that it came across as a bit excessive and disingenuous, to say the least. But you understood why they had to do it, because you knew what the Republicans were going to say on that end. So you look at it from that standpoint. In terms of the choice that they made, it was the obvious choice, which is Vice President Kamala Harris. That's the direction this is going in.
If it's not her, would you be pissed? Would you think it's wrong?
Oh, I would be. It would definitely be wrong. First of all, I look at it this way. This is just me. God forbid something had happened to him and he passed away. Who would be the president?
She would.
It would be her. Mm-hmm. Okay, when you donate to the campaign It's the Biden-Harris campaign. It ain't just Biden. So the apparatus, the structure is already in place. Mm-hmm. And so why disrupt all of that, particularly this late in the game when you have to get those delegates? You can't afford to do that. So the synergy, the cohesiveness that you need, she obviously brings that to the table. Plus, she was your vice president. To me, it's an obvious choice to make here. And she has to go for it. You're a prosecutor. You're going against somebody that's been convicted of 34 felonies, that's been impeached twice. This guy had civil cases against them. This should be right up your alley. It's one thing to go up against Dems, people that are your contemporaries in your wheelhouse, and you got to butt heads with them. It's another thing entirely when they're out the way, and the only thing you've got to focus on is the opposition that is the opposite party, which is him. It should be easy for her to go up against him, of all people.
Two things. One, so you're okay with this manipulated process because of who she is. You did not mention that Harris would be the first female president, right, or let alone the first black female president.
Right.
Why not?
Because I don't care at this particular point. I'm about what's best for America. That's the number one thing that I want to. Of course, as a black man, I would be incredibly proud if she were to become president of the United States. But it's primarily because of her qualifications as a black woman, not because she's a black woman. She's the former district attorney in San Francisco, former attorney general in the state of California, a U.S. senator. She's put in the time. She's put in the work. She has the credentials. She has the intellect. She has the fiery personality. If you let it out and you don't muzzle her like the administration presumably did, all of those things come into place. As a black man, I will not apologize for wanting somebody black in that position. I voted for Barack Obama. It wasn't an option. It wasn't an option. I had to vote for him in 2008. The first opportunity for a black person to become president of the United States, absolutely. But once that transpires and that precedent has been set and history has been made, now we dial it back to those qualifications even more so. Not to say that he wasn't qualified, but certainly even more so. And when you look at it from that standpoint,
she's more qualified than he was.
That's right. Just like he said Hillary was more qualified than he was, right, as a junior senator back in 2007, 2008. So I look at it from that standpoint. I would be very, very happy. But the state of affairs that exist in this country, we have to make sure that it's somebody that's qualified. She is qualified. Make no mistake about it. But I'm not thinking about black, white, or anything like that. I'm thinking about the best person for the job.
No, interesting take. Let's talk about the state of play a little bit. You think she can win?
I think she could. I think it's going to be uphill battle because I do think that the Republicans had gained momentum. You're hearing a lot more about the record that Joe Biden has put forth, the infrastructure bill, the rescue plan, the Rescue Act, Ketanji Brown Jackson being appointed to the Supreme Court justice, along with other things that the administration has done. You're hearing about that now. Keep in mind, we spent a whole bunch of time not hearing about that because they were busy telling us about the disaster that Trump was going to be. Oh, my Lord, he's a criminal. Oh, my Lord, he's got to be out there. We can't, it's a threat to democracy, blah, blah, blah. We were hearing about that more so than we were hearing about what the Harris-Biden administration or the Biden-Harris administration had done. Now we're hearing more about their record and what they achieved. If you're a liberal, you're a Democrat, you're a progressive, you feel good about it. If you're a conservative Republican, you don't feel good about it. So it's two sides, and you obviously got to pick one. It's hard to pick. You might say it might have been hard to pick her over other viable Democratic candidates if there was a pool of people she had to go against in a primary. That is not what this is. It's the presidency of the United States. It's the Republican against the Democrat. It's going to be her against Trump. And to me, that is a battle she has a chance to win.
Two more quick beats. First one is, what do you think of Bobby Kennedy talking to Trump? And Trump, obviously, his people went bad on the conversation, said he didn't want a quid pro quo, which, you and I know enough. Trump doesn't have a problem with the quid pro quo.
Not at all.
It's just that Bobby wants to stay in the race. But it is a nod to the idea that Bobby may be a spoiler in this race, but not for Harris. But against Trump.
Okay, but I don't mind that because what you're doing is you're forcing somebody to come to the center.
Right.
As you have educated me about on many occasions, too much operating on the fringes. What Kennedy does is say, come to the middle. Because I'm an independent. I'm a centrist to some degree. There are certain things that I see from the conservative side. There's certain things that I see from the liberal side. That's the vast majority of America. It's not about the fringes. It's about where the masses are. The vast majority is. And if that's what he ultimately forces and compels folks to do, I'm all for it.
Did you see any of the hearing today with the Secret Service?
Yes, I did.
What argument could you make that she should not resign?
Zero. She has to resign.
Has to, right?
She openly admitted that it was an awful job on her part, that the buck stops with her. I forgot the Republican senator that said to her, because Donald Trump was shot but not killed, you look incompetent. Had he been killed, you'd look culpable. And so for me, when you have that kind of indictment and you have the leader of the committee, along with a Democrat, both of them asking for your letter of resignation, along with an abundance of elected officials, you've clearly dropped the ball. You said the buck stopped with you. You said it was an egregious error. You've admitted that you dropped the ball.
She also didn't know a lot of stuff.
That's right.
That stuff about the roof, and then you saw all those old members of Congress tap dancing on that.
No question. No, listen, at the end of the day, when the buck stops with you and you're that culpable, somebody new needs to be in that job. It's just that simple. She has to resign.
You know who should say she's out?
Who?
Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris should say this lady should step down.
I can say that as well. I don't disagree with you, but I would tell you a name. I would tell you someone that comes before Kamala Harris, herself. The fact of the matter is, you know you didn't do the job.
Yeah.
You know you dropped the ball, and you nearly got a presidential candidate killed, assassinated, on live television, by the way.
What do you think of people saying he wasn't shot? I don't know what's crazier, that Trump did this to himself, he wasn't shot, or that Biden planned it. That's how crazy we are, Steve.
In the age of social media and beyond, and sometimes we can find ourselves guilty of this as well, but we got a lot of children. Grown-ups acting like children. And we call them trolls, but they're really children. What they're doing is they're instigating and provoking, not just conversations, but actions just based off of emotion, devoid of facts, and they don't even care about facts. And when you have people like that, you got to know how to identify that and be a big person about it, and be the adult in the room. Sometimes it's hard because they get on your damn nerves. And what you want to do is you want to check them. You want to check them real quick, let them know. But in the end, in the age of camera phones and everything else, and the slightest thing being able to be misconstrued and misinterpreted and what have you, it's more important for us to be the adult in the room, particularly over situations like this. It's just an immature thing for people to do. There was a shot that was fired. It did graze his ear. There was blood coming down his face. The Secret Service didn't jump on stage for nothing. And so when you take all of those things into account, there is just absolutely positively no excuse to have a juvenile kind of thinking. You can utter it out of your mouth for a quick second, you thought something, but then your senses are supposed to kick in and you're supposed to be an adult about it.
It is all evidence of why there's such a desperation for better in the country.
Yeah.
As you said, the majority, they just want reasonable. They don't want left and right. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Pleasure.
Are you all able to drink all this in? What's going on here? This guy brings a different level. Don't show me. Nobody wants to see this. This is a different level of the game that he's got. And you can't even see his socks. Stephen A. Smith, ladies and gentlemen. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Up next, Kamala Harris has raised a lot of money, a record amount in the 24 hours since Biden announced he was dropping out. But I said it's starting to loosen, and to an extent, why? Not all the donors they need are on board. Why? I have one. Very rare to meet these people. You meet them live. Next. We're about to meet a guest that is a very precious commodity. Okay, I actually want to do an hour with this guy on my podcast if he wants to do it. So here's the context. In the 24 hours since Biden said it should be Harris, I'm not going to do it, the campaign has raised more than $250 million in donations and pledges. Those two things mean different things, but this is robust. However, one of the big bundlers, someone who has access to money and to people who can give money, okay, one of the big ones in the money game, and it is a game, says he will not be helping to fund the Harris campaign. Let's find out why. Joining me now, John Morgan. Mr. Morgan, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking this opportunity.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
So it's interesting. You, like many people, have said, I had traditional values that could square with moderate Democrats, could square with some moderate Republicans, but the squad pushed you to be an independent. And now you don't like what you're seeing with Biden stepping away. Why?
Well, I described myself before I was an independent as a Joe Biden Democrat. And now he's gone. I'm just an independent. But they pushed me away for a lot of reasons. When they started putting the word socialist at the end of Democrat, that was it. That was it for me. But I love Joe Biden. I believe that he is one of the most consequential presidents in the last decades, maybe all the way back to FDR. And so I love the guy. What happened here was a tragedy. When this is all over, the postmortem on his aides and what they knew and when they knew it and who knew what, it's going to be books upon books upon books. But we get to this point, and he's gone. Pelosi talked about a mini convention. It's not going to happen. What basically happened is Biden endorsed her, Clinton's endorsed her, and then Pelosi endorsed her. I have a problem with the process. I have a problem with a coronation instead of a convention. We had a clean slate to pick out the best candidate to win. And guess what? It might have been her. We'll never know.
They say
because she
we don't
was
have the time.
Crowned.
John, this is what they say. We don't have the time. Trump is too big a threat. And how do you expect us as Democrats, this is their argument to me that I've been hearing ever since, and for weeks before, sitting VP, black female in the party of DEI. How are we supposed to pass that over? What's the answer?
Well, the answer is this. Let's go back to the primaries. How well did she do in the primaries?
She never made it to the primary. She had to drop out before Iowa.
And guess what? She was polling at 8% in California. That's her state. And now you want her to go win Michigan and Pennsylvania and North Carolina. So we should have taken a whole look at that. I love the historic side to it. I love the idea that she is African American and Indian. My grandchildren are Indian. I love that. But is she the best one to win? Are we in it to win it? And I don't know. When I think of who could have been there and who is going to be there, I see a lot of other people and a lot of other combinations.
Who would have had John Morgan?
To do that.
Who would have had John Morgan working the phones and writing checks that you're not going to get now?
Andy Beshear, big time. Shapiro from Pennsylvania, Whitmer from Michigan, Kelly from Arizona, North Carolina. I mean, a whole bunch of combinations of those people. And then I would have, if it's as dire as it seems, and if you really want to win, you go to Michelle Obama and you say, listen, democracy is on the table. You can save it. Did they ever try that? It's a clean slate. She would win in a landslide.
You think that's why President Obama hasn't endorsed?
I don't know. I hear he's going to come out pretty strong. But I don't know where he is right now. Look, he's the best ever. He came to my house. I raised millions for him. I mean, I wish he could be president for life. He's the best there ever was, the smartest guy in the room. But I don't know why he hasn't, but when I start thinking of what could have been, and I don't need, listen, Chris, I don't need a lot of time. I own racehorses. I don't need a lot of time to go pick out Secretariat and Justify and American Pharaoh. I can do that like now. Mark Kelly, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro, Andy Beshear. I don't need a lot of time. I need about 3 minutes to come up with what I believe would be a more potent campaign. What people have forgotten is how she was received when she ran for president. And she was received very poorly. Now, this gushing of money is understandable. And by the way, let me tell you what this is really about. This is not about the White House. This is about the House. This is about, and guess who controls the House? The person I admire the most in America, Nancy Pelosi. She's the one that wants to save the House because Trump's going to win, the Senate's going to be lost, and the only check is going to be the House. Everybody was melting down in the House. This is not about the White House. This is about the House. in my opinion.
Will you raise money for that?
Listen, I got some nuns in Apopka, Florida. Anytime they ask me for money, I give it. I got a priest named John Blewett in Florida. Anytime he asks me for money, I give it. Anytime Nancy Pelosi asks me for money, I give it. She took my children to meet the Dalai Lama at his house in India. Whatever she wants, I will do. Anything she wants, I will do. I wish she was president. She's the best, and she's the smartest, and she's the one that really quietly orchestrated this. You know why? And nobody's talking about this, Chris, because the House was gone too. And to Nancy Pelosi, the House is sacrosanct. It is her temple. It is her church. It is her. And she was not going to let the election hurt the House. And guess what? You talk about all the money raised. It wasn't all raised. It was Act Blue. It went to everybody. It's senators. And listen, do you think Tester's going to win? No. You think Sherrod Brown's going to win? No. Have I given money to both of them? Yeah. I've given money to Casey. Is he going to win? Probably. Joe Manchin's gone. The Senate's gone, in my opinion. My thought on this is Nancy Pelosi knew. And by the way, do you think Nancy Pelosi's a fan of the nominee for real?
I don't know.
You're in politics.
Yes, I am.
You know. And you know.
Well, I also know Nancy Pelosi isn't exactly subtle when she doesn't like somebody. That's for sure. But we're going to see. We're going to see soon. She wants to win, that's for sure.
She's little Bo Peep with razor blades. You don't want to cross Nancy Pelosi. And we saw how tough she was on this. When I saw Adam Schiff, I wrote her. I said, that's the canary in the coal mine. And then you see Zoe, whatever, Lofgren. I mean, it's Nancy. But she did what she thought she had to do. She was right.
Well, we'll see how it plays out.
There's a poster.
We got to see how it plays out,
everybody wants to be a lion until...
Everybody wants to be a lion until what?
But until it's time to do lion shit. And with blood on your face. So Nancy Pelosi did lion shit these last 2 weeks.
John Morgan, you have to come back on the show. Do you understand? You have a perspective that the American people need to understand. You know the game, you know what operates it, you know what's happening, and you know why. I'll be calling you early and often.
And by the way, your brother got screwed, and so did you.
John, great. Now the control room's going crazy.
In my humble opinion.
Yes. Oh, just your opinion. I disagree. John Morgan, thank you very much. Take care. Well, you know what? When you got money like that guy, you can say whatever you want without fear of recrimination. 3 minutes and 45 seconds. When we come back, we're going to get deep and serious. I don't like people playing with the assassination attempt of former President Trump. That's what it was. I'm going to debunk what we shouldn't be speculating on. We're going to ask the real questions to people who did the job. Did Trump stage it? Did Biden order it? Was it actually glass that hit him and not a bullet? I've got answers and I've got perspective from a Secret Service former member who did the job.
You know what it looks like, Director? It looks like you won't answer some pretty basic questions. It looks like you got a 9% raise and you cut corners when it came to protecting one of the most important individuals, most well-known individuals on the planet.
I just don't think this is partisan. If you have an assassination attempt on a president, a former president, or a candidate, you need to resign.
Transparency. That's why Jim Jordan is right. That's why Ro Khanna is one of the leaders of the future of the Democratic Party, because he's not playing sides. Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle gave about as unsatisfactory a performance as we've seen in one of those hearings. That isn't just overtly political nonsense chasing your opponents. If she doesn't resign or isn't taken out, the Democrats are going to have a problem. Bipartisan beatdown. Why? Because somebody tried to kill former President Donald Trump, and there, but for the grace, would have been successful. She couldn't answer what the plan was and why the plan failed, and gave this real disingenuous take on the roofs and the challenges, and then all these members of Congress were clumping around up there. Why is this so dangerous? Because of what happened to Trump, and it's not getting enough attention, but also because when you say, I don't know, you know what happens? Conspiracies. And now they're running amok. So let's do what we can to separate fact from fugazi here, okay? This was staged by Trump. Look, shortly after the shooting, a picture went viral showing Trump's Secret Service agents smiling moments after the shooting. People claim this is proof that it was staged. That is a digitally altered photo. It is BS. Do you understand? Then, there are many who say Trump didn't actually get shot. He only got hit by a piece of a broken glass from the teleprompter. First of all, if that happened to me, all you'd hear about was that I just got almost taken out because of a bullet. I don't care if it's a shard of glass. The photos show none of the teleprompters were damaged. So even if you were right and you're not, it still shouldn't matter. A New York Times photojournalist was able to capture the moment that the bullet whizzed past Trump's head. New York Times, friend of Trump? I don't think so. Then, the day of the shooting, a Republican member of Congress claims Biden ordered the assassination. Okay? Because Biden said it's time to put Trump in a bullseye, which he then apologized for, which he didn't need to. It's how people talk in politics. Listen to Trump. Only if you spend 5 minutes reading the article the congressman retweeted, you'd know that Biden was speaking to his donors, not military officials. The latest theory circulating online is that Crooks, the 20-year-old who did the shooting, was trained by the government at the local gun range. The reality? The range happened to offer classes to law enforcement and retired police officers. So, you got to put the BS aside. It's just feeding the fringe, the destruction of our dialogue. We got to get past it. There's nothing wrong with saying, thank God Trump didn't get killed that day. There's nothing wrong, and there's everything wrong with saying anything else. Joining us now for some perspective on how this job was supposed to be done and what it means, former special agent with the Secret Service, Paul Eckloff. Paul, am I wrong about Cheadle? Do you believe that what she did today and how she represented herself is befitting the station?
Chris, Director Cheadle's performance in the hearing was clearly unacceptable. She did not have the proper answers. She's not a trained media person as well. And I would say that some of the answers that they were demanding would compromise the investigation, or they would compromise national security by giving away tactics, techniques, and procedures of the Secret Service. And they could endanger the men and women who are on the field today, keeping President Trump safe. Your point and your passion about these conspiracies, I could not agree with you more. I am enraged. As a former Secret Service agent of 23 years, I was the assistant special agent in charge of the Donald Trump detail. I was on his campaign. I traveled the world with him and his family. I would caveat that by saying I had that same role under President Obama with his children, him. We live in a world that would judge my statements as being partisan or not based on the color of my tie. Notice the color that I chose on purpose. I chose red, white, and blue. And I know from your reporting for decades and from your passion, I wish more people would concentrate on what we need are answers on how to make the Secret Service better. Kim Cheadle does not have the faith and confidence of the men and women of the Secret Service, nor the faith and confidence of the men and women of America. And Americans are scared. It's really interesting that what I've seen is people want to feel safe. They want to feel secure when they go to these sites. They believe the Secret Service can protect them. The Secret Service failed that father and that lost his life, the two individuals that were shot. They certainly failed President Trump and his family. They failed America, and they failed themselves.
Do you have any reason to believe, Paul, that this was not misfeasance, mistakes, negligence, not doing the job the right way under these circumstances, and now the step to the dark side that too many people want to pursue, which is this was on purpose. Crooks wasn't working alone. It's like all very Kennedy-esque. The JFK-esque assassination plot. Do you have any reason to believe anything like that at this point?
I do not. And what's interesting, I have a different perspective than some people. And it is funny. I started my career in Dallas, Texas. I have been to the school book depository and I've looked out the 6-story window. I could take that shot with a handgun. But Americans, when they don't understand things, they look to magical answers. I find conspiracies constructive. Some of the things, it's called lateral thinking. In science, you look at things a little differently than other people. They may be ridiculous, but But then you can examine them. People are saying that the water tower, I mean, they've seen that in movies, but if there have been shots from the water tower, we'd have seen injuries in a certain area of the crowd that we did not. The people that were shot were in the direct line of sight from where this shooter was. I don't call myself an expert. I never would, which is funny because I'm probably the only person on the air with the 14 years with the president that I have. And as I examine it, I will just give you my personal opinion on what the reason and why the shooter did what he did. We need to apply Occam's razor. When all other things are equal, generally it's the simplest answer is the truth. This was an individual who was horribly bullied in high school. And one of the reasons he was bullied was because he was a bad shot and dangerous on the range. What did he do in the ensuing 3 years? He went to the shooting range, became a decent shot. Thank God he didn't go there long enough to become an excellent shot, though there are YouTube videos that have recreated the shot and shown that the red dot sights that he used would have been the size of President Trump at the time. So he did his best. And he went out that day. That day it happened to be President Trump. From his internet searches, and I have no special knowledge, I have the news reporting, which some of it's been excellent. It could have been anybody. He chose proximity. He was from Butler, Pennsylvania. So, of course, if President Trump comes to Butler, Pennsylvania, how do you best prove to your colleagues who bullied you? You show them you're a good shot. It's terrifying, it's simple, and it's sad. Mental health is a crisis in America. Access to weapons is a crisis in America. Now, I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I don't believe that just taking any gun away, but I also believe I know the first fault that led to this and perhaps the final fault. The first fault is more systemic. Why did the Secret Service allow this site to occur? I've done a vulnerability assessment of it myself. Perhaps it's an armchair quarterback, but I would caution those that would discredit me that I'm a quarterback that has played every position on the field and thrown the ball for this team. I identified at least 12 other buildings with a line of sight just as problematic. It would have taken over 200 officers to secure those buildings and their rooftops. The problem is the closest building. Had there been a counter-surveillance advance and team and a protective intelligence division advance and team, I believe we could have thwarted this. I would have photographed it. I would have photographed it, and I would have prevented access to that roof. The final error was access to the roof and the time it took to identify and stop the threat. I will tell you, full stop. As soon as the Secret Service counter-sniper officer technician saw the individual, the assassin with a rifle, as soon as he was able, he took a shot, a remarkable shot, and killed the assassin.
Paul Eckloff, I appreciate your candor. I appreciate your